BIONICLE, Journey's End. Written by Greg Farshtey. Recording by Dungeoneer Harold. Chapter 1. A lone figure stood before an ancient fortress. His journey had been a long and treacherous one. Now it seemed as if it had come to a sudden and very frustrating end. The structure in front of him had no visible doors or windows. There was no sign that anyone lived inside, or had for years. However, the fresh footprints of an Agori nearby said this might be the place. The answers he sought were inside, he was certain of it, but far less sure of how to reach them. His name was Madanui. Once, only mere months before, he could have reached down from the heavens and torn the roof from the building. A complex array of sensors could have located the Agori or any other person or object he sought from a world away. One stride could have carried him many kios across the land. That felt like a lifetime ago. Then his mind and spirit lived inside a miracle of engineering, towering some 40 million feet in the air. But he had been driven from the body and exiled to the desert world of Barra Magna. If not for the power of the mask of life he wore, he wouldn't even have a body now. As it was, he was only a little over 7 feet tall, vulnerable to pain and hunger and thirst, and far removed from the power to shake worlds. 7 feet tall, thought Madanui. I really hate being short. Barra Magna had been a revelation to Madanui in many ways. He had found friends among the Glatorian Agori who lived here. He had been drawn into their struggle against the marauding Skrull and bone hunters. He had even found proof that the great beings, his creators, had once walked these sands. Part of that evidence had been a coin found by an Agori scavenger named Barracks, made of a metal said to have been mined to the north. The design on the coin's face matched that of the one on the Skrull shields. At first it looked like just a bunch of interconnected lines, but as Madanui learned more about this planet, particularly about the great beings and their works, he realized the design was far more than decorative. It was not just artwork or a symbol of some abstract concept. It was a map. But he wondered, a map of what? The answer came courtesy of an Agori named Crotesius, who told him that he had been part of a failed expedition to the north in search of the Valley of the Maze. He had returned without finding it, but one of his companions, Tarduk, had left again to resume the search. Madanui resolved to seek the valley and find out what might lie at the heart of the maze. Now that mission had brought him here, to a fortress with no doors in the center of a vast stone maze. After weeks of traveling and many dangers, here he was, confronted by yet another mystery, with no easy solution. By the great beings, I have had enough of this, Madanui growled. His voice echoed off the peaks all around. Amazingly, there came an answer. The words came from the fortress, though there was no sign of anyone to speak them. They floated through the air on a whisper, so soft he almost missed it over the sound of the breeze. What do you seek? Madanui took 2 quick strides forward and stared up at the fortress. Entrance, he said. There was a long silence. Then the voice repeated, What do you seek? I wish to enter, Madanui replied more loudly, but I see no way to do so. This time the voice did not hesitate to respond. When it did, there was a trace of iron in its tone, as if the speaker were losing patience. What do you seek? What is your burden? What brings you life and death? So it's not asking questions, thought Madanui. It's posing riddles. This fortress and the maze that surrounds it were designed to keep out anyone who might use the power of the great beings for selfish reasons. So if I don't give the right answers here... He allowed himself to wonder if Tarduk had made it this far, and if so, had he given the wrong answers? What then? Had the great beings rigged traps to destroy potential intruders? Were his creators really that ruthless? What do I seek? It's a very good question, he admitted. When I first came to BIONICLE, all I wanted was to escape and save my people from the evil of my enemy, Makuta. I didn't know then that this place was tied to my origins. I didn't know I might find answers here to questions I had never asked. Madanui sat down on the ground and stared at the stone walls of the fortress. He was going to have to give this answer a lot of thought.
"Where is he?" Kina asked. She was standing amid the dunes of the BIONICLE desert, her eyes fixed on the northern mountains. "He should be back by now."
Beside her, Akar nodded. Perhaps, but we've got no idea how far he had to travel, or what he might have found.
"Or what might have found him," Kina added grimly. "We should have stayed with him, no matter what he said."
The two were warriors, and Madanui's closest friends. He had helped them free their villages from the threat of the Skrull, but not stayed around for thanks. Shortly after the villages had agreed to unite into one mega-city, Madanui had departed to track down the meaning of Barrax's coin. Akar and Kina, accompanied by another warrior, Gresh, and Barrax, had gone with him. The way had been fraught with danger, and the battles had been fierce. After Barrax was badly wounded, Madanui had insisted that the others turn back and return to the desert. Akar had argued that it was too perilous for Madanui to go on alone, but Madanui remained adamant. "No, my friends," he had said. "You are needed there, with your people. I have to find a way back to mine." Now weeks had passed with no sign of him. Akar felt the same worries Kina did, but saw no reason to make her feel worse. "We have to believe Madanui knows what he's doing. It's not the first time he's gone off on his own," he reminded her. "Last time it was to save your life."
"Right," said Kina. "So I owe him. And I pay my debts. With or without you, I'm going after him."
Akar knew there were some things on BIONICLE that one couldn't argue with. An enraged Scopio, a hungry swarm of scarabax beetles, and Kina once she had her mind made up. Besides, there came a point where being a true friend to Madanui meant not respecting his wishes on everything. "Okay," he said. "I'll get supplies. You find Gresh. He's going to want to come too." Akar started to turn away, but Kina reached out to stop him. When he turned back to her, he saw real fear in her eyes.
"Do you think he's okay?" she asked. "I mean, he couldn't be, you know. Could he?"
"If anyone can come back from those mountains in one piece, it's Madanui," Akar answered. "So let's make sure we're there to greet him." Madanui had been staring at the fortress for hours, rolling the questions around his head. He had moved on from trying to divine the correct answer to the first and focused on the second. What is my burden? That was easy. He had left behind a universe full of beings that depended on him, Toa and Matoran, willing to sacrifice their own lives on his behalf. His carelessness had allowed evil to usurp rule over his home and placed all those lives in jeopardy. Now here he was on BIONICLE with little clue how to make things right again, reduced to trying to figure out maddening riddles. It was beyond frustrating. He had a duty to save his people, and he was wasting time like... "Wait a minute," he thought. "Duty. It's duty that drives me on. The responsibility I feel for the people of my universe. Duty is my burden." Everything suddenly made sense. The great beings had taught him about 3 virtues, which he and the Matoran he protected were to live by. They were unity, duty, and destiny. If the answer to the second question was duty, then perhaps... Madanui rose. "I seek unity," he shouted.
"What is your burden?" the mysterious voice asked.
"Duty," answered Madanui.
"What brings you life and death?"
"The same thing that brings it for everyone else," thought Madanui. "Destiny," he said. Before his eyes, the stone blocks in the center of the fortress seemed to soften and melt together. A square gap about 8 feet high appeared in the base of the building. Then the stone became stone again, with a doorway now in place. Madanui glanced at Click, the scarabax beetle who he had befriended on his arrival on BIONICLE. It now rode on his shoulder, but did not look very happy about that fact just now. "Looks like an invitation," said Madanui. "What do you think?" The beetle clicked its pincers together furiously, a clear sign of displeasure. "That's what I thought you'd say," Madanui replied. "Well, sorry, old friend. We didn't come all this way to stand outside." Madanui entered the tower. He half expected another maze inside, but it was quite the opposite. A stairway leading down awaited him, but no other exit. Sword at the ready, he descended the stairs. They seemed to go on for days, winding around and around with no end in sight. Then Madanui began to feel the heat, an overwhelming wave that almost staggered him. It grew worse the further down he went, but he pressed on. There was, after all, no other choice. When he finally reached bottom, it took him a moment to take in the incredible scene. A large chamber stretched out before him, bare of any furniture. In the center of the floor was a pool of lava, boiling, churning, and glowing red-hot. And hanging suspended above it, upside down and bound in chains, was Tarduk. End of chapter 1.